Okay, welcome to a not so typical episode, but I feel like I'm going to start doing things like this more often, just kind of last minute, like, hey, you guys want to chat about this? And then putting it in my solo episode day, like on Thursdays. So we are talking today about the scrunchie that broke the internet. So just a little bit of background. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, but my mom and my memere and I were at Kensington Palace in London, and we were like, oh, let's go do the afternoon tea. So we were stressing even before we left to go to London. That was the one thing that was kind of stressing us out because we're like, we don't know what to wear. Like my mom was looking up, rules online for what you can and cannot wear to afternoon tea in London. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, my mom and my memere are very much like that. Like they're very concerned about like being underdressed or not wearing something appropriate. Always, like my whole life. And so it kind of rubs off on me as well. But I know in the back of my mind, this is going to be a touristy place and there's probably going to be people in like shorts and Birkenstocks. Like, let's be honest. It's not going to be a typical afternoon tea that, actual royalty, wealthy Londoners go to. So anyways, that's kind of like the backstory. And if people were watching my stories on Instagram, they know that we were having these, debates about afternoon tea etiquette. And so we go to Kensington Palace.
It speaks to a generational perspective as well, in the sense of being very proper. I can remember growing up and going to my grandmother's house, and my parents would say, don't put your elbows on the table. Don't drink the milk out of your cereal bowl. That's not what you do at grandma's house, right? Like that, there is an element of the different generations. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because even when we went and saw Wicked at the theater. And so again, it was like, oh my God, like, do we have to wear a certain thing at the theater? Like, can we not do this? So we show up at the theater, we kind of dress nice. And I put on, like, I didn't wear my running shoes. I put on like my other shoes that I brought. We go there and it's full of kids. It's all like kids, like off a bus, like with backpacks and baseball hats. And I'm like, oh, good. I'm happy we stressed about what to wear to the theater. So anyways, we go to Kensington Palace. We go to the tea. And of course, as I, suspected, there's jean jackets. Because I even brought a different cardigan in a backpack to switch into for the tea, because my mom's like, no, you can't wear a jean jacket to afternoon tea. I'm like, oh my God. And of course, the first thing I noticed was like jean jackets everywhere. So we're sitting there doing the tea thing, just like chatting and having a great time. And then I pull out my phone and I set it up to take a video of me drinking a little cute cup of tea, because in my mind, I was like, I'm going to do content that's like little clips of our trip, and that will be one of the clips, like me drinking tea. It's very London. So as I'm doing that, camera's rolling, my mom starts to say like, look at your wrist, like look at your arm. And I'm trying to ignore her because I'm like, I just want to get this shot, done. And she couldn't think of the word for scrunchie, but in the moment I didn't know that. And so I was confused. I'm like, what? Like, what is happening? And I'm irritated now because she's interrupting my video that I just want to quickly do so I can put my phone away. And so finally I realized
right there, a pin that she couldn't find the word scrunchie. I just want to pin that in the context of what we're going to talk about today. And then you didn't know what she's talking about. Keep going.
Yeah, totally. And so I put a scrunchie on my wrist for this episode. So once I realized what she was referring to, I said, the scrunchie? And again, here's where in the moment, I thought she was basically saying, you shouldn't have the scrunchie on your wrist for tea, like for afternoon tea. And in my mind, I was like, we've already gotten here and seen everybody in sandals and jean jackets. Like, so that's why I leaned over and I said, Mom, Like, are you fucking mental? Like, look around. And okay, like that's aggressive, but that's how we banter in my family. And that's not out of the ordinary. Like, she was not taken aback by that. That was just like Renee being Renee. And then after the fact, I realized that she thought I wouldn't want the scrunchie in my cute video. So that was her concern. It wasn't like you shouldn't have a scrunchie on at afternoon tea. She thought, because it was so big, and that's the hand that I was holding my teacup with. So she was like trying to let me know as I was recording this video, like, do you want that scrunchie in that video? So then my memere pipes in. Oh, and this is the best part. And this is all rolling. So that's why I said, I was like, I'm recording all of this. And my memere's like, here, like just as a joke, I'll show you how to drink tea, like with her pinky finger out. And that's another thing that we were reading about was the pinky finger not being up. Like we as Canadians probably think that's like the posh way to drink tea, but it's actually the opposite when you read up on that. And so that's why I was like, oh, Mehmet, like you're actually false, like whatever. And then I put the camera on her and her fingers like up in the air. So I recorded that, like didn't think anything of it. And then later that night I was going through.
So
you want to say something?
Yeah. So one of the things that I hear in this piece, and it's so interesting because social media doesn't give us the context in terms of what we're seeing. We miss so much information. First, your way of being, which now we've sat together several times. I know you're spicy. There's this part of me that is like, I'm going to call you out and we're going to do this thing and I can still respect you at the same time. And then you're telling me that there was this element where your mom couldn't find the word for scrunchie. So she was trying to like get that word out to you. So she was trying to find that word. And then that you're joking and you are viewing this moment as a like, okay, here is this like a thing that is totally typical for our family. We are just doing this thing and here we go.
And it's interesting because after the fact, it's a non-issue.
Right.
Like we enjoyed our tea, shared our sandwiches. Right. Like it wasn't even a thing. It's like there I can look at my mom and be like, no hard feelings. We laughed.
Right. And one of the immediate things too that comes up for me there, Renee, is this concept around shame and people shaming and versus having a different opinion. And I found this really interesting because it even showed up in which I know you'll talk about, all of the comments that showed up on your reel. And that people often say, you're shaming. You're trying to shame people about this when you're actually presenting a different point of view. And let's even break down not the comments that happened with your reel, but this piece here between you and your mom. She wasn't shaming you. She wasn't attacking you. She wasn't criticizing you, because shame looks and sounds like you're bad. You're disgusting to put that scrunchie in this video. Why would you even think that? Do you think people are going to actually like you when you do that? Right? That is a shame-based statement. That is shaming and saying there is something inherently wrong with you. But if she's to say something, I don't like that scrunchie. Why is that scrunchie in the video? That's not shaming. That is, she is different than you.
Yeah. 100%. She could think that is unappealing in the kind of video that I was trying to take. Whereas for me, I don't care. It's almost on brand for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we got back to the Airbnb later that night, I was sitting downstairs by myself. They were putting on their PJs and stuff. And I'm going through the content that I had shot that day. And I get to that video and I finally watch it through, like beginning to end. And I was pissing my pants laughing. And so they're upstairs saying like, what's going on? And so they come downstairs. We must have watched that video 20 times. And like, they were like bent over, like we were dying laughing. I was sweating. Like I was laughing so hard. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I have to put this as a TikTok in and of itself because it's so funny. And then
Which again shows us the context of your family. This is how we connect. This is our way of being. This is how we show up. And this is what makes us feel good. And that there's that laughter there. There wasn't any, and it would have been different if it felt different for you. If you had watched that video and said, wow, they were actually kind of harsh on me. Like maybe I need to source that out. Maybe I need to kind of look at what's happening for me and what was happening for them. That would have been a really different experience. But in this moment, you're saying this was funny. This was us connecting and laughing and all of our own dynamics that make up our family.
mm-hmm. it's and then it was my, of course, like I'm used to social media. To me, it's like whatever. But my mom, like she's reading the comments and she's like, oh my God, like what is wrong with people? Like I think not that it bothered her, because at the end of the day, like we know how our family is. Like, first of all, like my mom and I organized this entire trip for my memere. Like, why would I even travel with, you know, multiple times, go to my parents' house, like as much as possible to hang out with them? If I could live with my parents, like I probably would. But people don't know that part of it. And so, yeah, I think my mom was kind of taken aback by some of the comments because, and like I wrote down some of the things, the words that people were using just for that 45-second clip was like that she was being critical, which I did not think so. Like people were throwing around the word abuse, controlling, insecure, sad. Someone would never do that to someone that they love, shaming, toxic. You can see the cycle of abuse because like my mom says it to me and then I like corrected my memere or said that to my memere. Judgmental, negative, rude, disgusting. And I'm like, that is shocking to me. And like, I don't know. Like I was trying to put myself in someone else's shoes, like just scrolling through social media, seeing a video like that. But I honestly don't even think I would, like, I don't think it would trigger any kind of emotional response for me. But obviously that video did for so many people. But then it's funny because the people that know me, that follow my stories, know my family, they thought it was funny.
They have the context. And this is something that is particularly dangerous with social media and also really challenging in terms of creating relationships with people, because a lot of our relationships are online now and we show up with our own lens and we project it onto other people. And then we believe that to be a truth. And instead of actually stepping out of that and saying, there are always going to be multiple truths to a situation. One is yours, one is mine, and then the outside is what actually really happened. And none of them tells the full story because, of course, internally, we have so much felt sense, internal experience of what it is. And when I read through the comments, I also wanted to add into the comments there because I thought, oh gosh, like, wow, look what's happening. We are coming to this with only our own perception. And it was really interesting to see some people comment and to continue to comment and push and push and push their perspective onto other people. So much so, actually, I don't know if you know this, but someone who had commented under my comment, she deactivated her account because someone kept pushing back on her. And when I step back from that, I think, oh gosh, this here is a trauma response. Is that if I have to push so hard that you absolutely have to, you must believe me to be true, that comes from trauma somewhere in our histories. And we've all, like, you know, let's clarify this. We've all experienced trauma, hurt, disappointments, rejections along the way. Some are to varying degrees and intensities. But when we show up in a relationship like that, which again, how we define that, let's redefine that. When we show up in context with other people, when we're doing that, it is coming from a very unhealed, triggered place. Instead of being able to step back and say, whew, what's going on here? This is really interesting. I'm having this reaction to this and I don't know what that's about. And I can actually see that there's a lot of information about this 30, 60-second clip that I don't know, but it's certainly reflecting something back to me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can then get really curious about that and say, what am I feeling in this moment? What is it about what you're doing that is triggering me or the other person is doing? And what is it reminding me of in my own life? And what is it maybe something that I haven't healed just yet?
I I find like this was obviously a very specific example, but if you think about content on social media in general, there's always, and like triggered is a buzzword now. It's like everybody uses it. And what does that actually mean? Is it just it elicits an emotional response in somebody?
Yeah, triggered. We initially started using the word triggers. And also, thank you, Renee, for bringing that piece up because this is the challenge with the speed at which social media is moving and our information consumption as our brains can't keep up with it. So then we are constantly using these words and these terms without understanding their true meaning. And it's like a wildfire. So, triggered actually comes from more of our research and clinical work within post-traumatic stress disorder, where we look at, you were in a car accident, and so then the car becomes your trigger. And so we then
Mm.
need to work around and work through PTSD, get treatment for it so that those triggers isn't so much that they're no longer something that creates a response inside of you, a reaction, but rather you can learn to respond differently to that. So a trigger is anything that creates this emotional, cognitive, physiological, or behavioral response within ourself. Behavioral meaning I avoid getting into the car. Emotional meaning I'm anxious and I'm overwhelmed. Physiological is I feel my whole body freeze and tense up. And the thoughts being I can't get in this car. I'm going to get into a car accident. This is so dangerous, right? So a trigger
Mm.
is this outside piece of information. Or we can look at it even from the nervous system perspective, which I love talking about. The nervous system perspective is triggers are going to be anything that's inside of you, your own thoughts and feelings, your own memories, sensations, something happening between you and the other person, someone like between, and then external. External being what's happening in the world, what's the news, what's the social media posts that I see. And so that trigger then stimulates a nervous system response. Am I staying calm and connected? Or am I going into a space of fight or flight or freezing and shutting down?
So on social media, because I always think like if somebody's triggered, oftentimes their response is that it's the person that has triggered them that is in the wrong.
Yes,
Like
we go
you
out.
did something wrong.
Right.
So
Can I?
the other day, or yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. Um, which is something that we do, and maybe you've started to see Milo do it, although it might start to come up in a little bit, is that it's actually part of our brain development. It's an egocentric perspective. Is that when we project outwards, it's because actually our brain is not able to go inwards yet. Our brain can't do self and other perspectives. Our brain, so one of the most common examples is, one of the kids will be like, "Ah, you tripped me." And I'm like standing on the other side of the room, not near them. And I'll say, and so we've actually talked about, yeah, that's a blame and you're looking outwards. And gosh, that doesn't feel good when you trip. And I wasn't standing here tripping you. So let's look to see how tripping could have happened. But it's our job as parents to help our kids learn perspectives, to practice taking
Mm-hmm.
perspectives. And for many of us, we don't know how to do that. So then we continue into adulthood with this perspective of very much projecting outwards, putting our pain onto other people, blaming other people, rather than going inwards. And it was totally seen all over those
Mm-hmm.
comments on your reel. So I'm going to go outwards and tell you
Yeah.
that you're the issue.
I posted a couple weeks ago a a reel on the podcast account, and it did really well because it's funny and it's relatable, but it was so basic, and it's just me with text, and it says like the number one thing you should bring on vacation when you're traveling with your kids or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end, it just like pans to my mom playing with Milo in the background in the sand. And it says like grandma. That's it. Very simple, cute TikTok. And then I got a DM from someone saying that, you know, I have a very diverse audience and I need to be more careful with what I'm posting because some people may have lost their moms or don't have a good relationship with their mom, so their children don't have grandma and so on and so forth. And so I responded saying, I totally understand what you're saying, but as someone that creates content, if I were to publish content thinking about stuff like that, like to that level, where do I draw the line? Do I not post content about my husband because some people are single parents and they don't have a partner?
Right.
Do I not post about my sister because some people may have lost their sister? Like, where do you draw the line? And so it's hard as someone that puts out content because no matter what, there's going to be a group of people that are triggered or that do not like your content because of experiences or situations that are going on in their own life. So it's like you can't put a trigger warning and, you know, write this big long caption for every single piece of content that you post that's trying to acknowledge every single person's experience that could possibly be happening in the world.
So let's take first a perspective in terms of you as this business, as this entity that you are, and that you, of course, none of us will ever know all of you. On the outside, that's not possible. Whatever kind of business you're running, we will not know who you are as the true person. Only you know that. But then we have this layer around us of how we show up, and we get to make that decision. And one of the best ways, Renee, for you to show up in this space is going to be for you to be fully authentic to yourself. Look up second self, and it's a really good piece to do some reading around that, second self. Because what we're doing when we present ourselves out to the world is we're putting on our second self. And the challenge, though, is that when we're showing up in a way that we think other people want us to show up, that is when we are internally distressed. It's when we will not internally feel aligned or feel good. We're more likely to burn out. But then also imagine then you post something of like, I don't know, you in your relationship role. And then people are like, what? How could this happen? And in some ways, if I even think of Rachel Hollis and her husband, people were so shocked to hear that they had separated because their second self into the world was portraying them as this happy, connected marriage. So there's that piece. But I think we need to also come back to we are responsible for our own triggers. We can't ask the world to be different. And I think, so I want to say that again, and I want people to hear me on this, and I'm going to also add something to it. We are responsible for our own triggers. This does not make it okay for you to accept and tolerate abusive and disrespectful behavior. And that is so important. It doesn't give people permission to treat you poorly, but instead what we can do then is we can have our own sense of agency and make choices that are going to be the best for us. So, hey, you know, Renee's putting out this content and, you know, I'm noticing I'm not feeling all that great watching it lately. So I'm going to just mute her for 30 days and see how I feel when she pops back up. And maybe I choose to unfollow her, but look at that choice that I can step into for myself so that I can feel good. It's not possible to ask the world to change. And when I think of what I do with my community, the clients in my office, my book, all of those pieces are, you have to make choices for you. Nobody is making you stay in a relationship. Nobody is saying that you absolutely must be a certain way, but we can't make other people change. So we have to then go inwards and say, how is this working for me?
Yeah. And I think it's very unrealistic to think that you can scroll social media and just love every piece of content and relate to every. That's usually, if I post something, like the biggest criticism that I will receive is like, this is not relatable. And it's like, not everyone is going to be relatable to everyone. Not like there might be certain parts of my life that are relatable to you and other parts that are not. And it's like, it's almost like that's become a point of criticism is you're not relatable. And it's like, oh, okay.
It reminds me of Kohut's self-psychology and the 3 principles within that. It's a really nice alignment with attachment theory, and the three pieces we look for in our relationships in this perspective are sameness, we are the same, mirroring, you mirror back to me, and twinship, we are identical. Did I get them right? I might have mixed them up. But what we do though, we do this in our relationships, we do this on social media, is if you and I are the same and we view this as the same, then this feels safe and soothing for me. So even this idea of all of those DMs for you or the comments on that reel of like, no, you have to view it this way. This is us trying to find safety, because when things are predictable in the world, we feel control, we feel a sense of certainty. And even though that familiarity, though, is not necessarily what's good for us, but familiar is safe. Instead of what I help people learn to do is tap into what this interdependence piece is, which is I have my whole self inside of me. I am okay. I have different thoughts and feelings from you. In fact, I have all these different experiences, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're all of mine, and I'm okay. And then you have all your different thoughts, feelings, opinions, desires, and wishes, and you're okay as well. And now how are we going to co-create our world together? How do we come in and be autonomous, right? We want our autonomy, but we also want intimacy and connection with people, which if I'm telling you we need to be connected, we can't connect if I say to you, you can only play with trucks in my sandbox. Do not bring your shovel or your bucket. This is a trucks only zone. Come play with me and be in relationship with me. And that's not possible. We have to co-create that. You get to bring your bucket and shovel into my sandbox, and I will find a place to play with cars.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So before we finish up this episode, is there anything else you wanted to say? But I'm going to ask you a little bit about your book before we end.
Oh, there's this piece around us wanting to play armchair psychologist.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And, you know, I want to encourage listeners that one of our downfalls, I think, as humans is wanting to find our whys. Why is this happening? Why do people do this? Why? Rather than maybe going inwards and saying, what is this serving for me? What is this doing for me? And what do I need? And what do I want to be different? And rather than looking outward all of the time, let's go inward and, you know, explore what's going to feel good for us.
And not everything is so deep.
Yeah.
And traumatic. Like, not everything is so deep. Like, I can't imagine scrolling social media and diving so deep into like a 30-second video from people I don't even know. Like, who has the time? I don't have the mental energy to do that. Like, it's not a big deal.
It's again something that it's serving the other person. And again, I think the biggest thing I want people to know is that whatever your reaction was to your reel, it's not wrong or bad. You're allowed to have that reaction. It also doesn't mean it's based in truth. Two things can be true. That was not the intention behind your behavior, behind your mom's and your grandma's behavior. That was not the intention behind that. And that's really important for us to recognize.
Yeah, I feel like intention is never... it's not considered enough in so many areas of our life. It's like, yeah, but was there intention? Like, maybe something bad or not, they reacted in not the best way, but like, was there intention to be malicious, or was it, you know?
So,
Anyhow.
So in 2016, just give a context. So I started my social media space in 2018, and I was pretty early on with people. And there weren't as many therapists on at the time. And this knowledge translation was starting to pick up. In 2016, so just 2 years before that, I remember a therapist in the community here saying, gaslighting. I've never heard of that term before. What is that? How do you understand that term? And now, at which the speed of these words are being used, we have to understand that the language we use matters, and it affects our relationships and also affects our internal understanding of things, of ourself, of the other person, of the world. And so if I say to myself, Renee's manipulating me, and then I start to repeat that in my head, I'm then going to see when you text me, I'm going to confirm that bias I hold. She's manipulating me. And then AI or the algorithms, whatever it is that's going on, then the algorithm knows to show me a post on manipulation. I'm like, look, there's the behaviors that Renee's doing. That's exactly it. See, she's a manipulator. She's gaslighting. And so then we start to lose that perspective and that flexibility. And it's been so interesting actually to observe this behavior, the uptick of these conversations from lots of people, sometimes people who are not qualified to have these conversations. My colleagues and I, we spend our lunches talking about how interesting it is to observe this, because what it ultimately comes down to is we can't lose our sense of agency. We have choices. And that other people, we can look at intentions. And if something's not working for us, then we need to make a change. We can do that though. I know there's a lot in there. So if you are listening and you're like, okay, Dr. Tracy, like I can't make a change, this is too hard, please reach out for someone to support you for that, because it is hard to change. Did I get to be
so
on my
you have something very
you?
exciting. Yeah, no, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. You have something very exciting happening in your life, so I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. When you have a book coming out, which is like so exciting, so incredible. Have you seen the cover of it? Like, have you seen a final product?
I do not have the official product in my hand yet, but I have printed out the cover as it would look in front and back and the spine. And it is, and I've seen every page in the book. I have reread every page in the book to look for if there's a period or a comma in the wrong place. It's unreal. 300 pages.
Okay, so how long did it take you to write? Why is it, you can tell us a little bit about the topic, like what the book is about, and why did you choose that specific topic for the book?
So the book is called I Didn't Sign Up for This, and I was repeatedly seeing the same thing show up in my office. I work with primarily couples and mothers, and it was this theme of this relationship that they thought they had signed up for. And of course, we have that honeymoon stage where things are really good. And then as things do, they change. But continuously, not just parents, because the cases in the story are not just parents, but continuously people kept showing up saying, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't the relationship I wanted. And we can try to do the communication strategies. We can try to do the division of the labor differently, or our love languages. And ultimately, I believe that at our core, we're working to do something else, which is what you and I have talked about here today, which is building interdependence. We live in a society where we are so fearful of codependency now that we've actually swung so far into independence. And that we're losing that space of what it means to look like interdependently, a healthy relationship of self and other, of autonomy and intimacy. And it's at this crux that we struggle with of how do I still be a separate self while also coming together with you? And as our relationships unfold, we know that all of our unhealed wounds, our early childhood experiences, and these repeating patterns in our relationships just start to show up and they become entrenched. When I thought about writing this book, I wanted to bring it alive for people, because I often get questions of what happens in couples therapy, what actually goes on inside couple relationships. And so the book is actually 5 cases. So there's a story of a blended family where they are navigating a difficult ex-wife and how they are trying to be a good, strong relationship while also blending their family. There's a story of a woman who shows up in my office because many people show up individually when their partners say, I don't want to come to therapy. And she's a classic people pleaser, experiencing anxiety and really struggling to feel close with her partner now that they have 2 kids. There's another couple where they are struggling with a really difficult mother-in-law who shows up unexpectedly on the front door, and her husband does not know how to set boundaries, and they're at a make or break point in their relationship. And then the fourth one is a couple with a young baby struggling to navigate the mental load. And then there's a fifth one inside, because when I was writing this book, what felt really real and authentic for me was also showing up as myself, because a lot of people will say, and this shows up with my clients in session as well, well, you got it all together. So how do I get the relationship like you? You probably never struggled with this stuff. And a lot of times I'm sitting in session. Sometimes it's not appropriate for me to disclose in those moments, but many times I'm sitting in session thinking, I wish you just knew. I wish you knew that when I had a child, our relationship completely changed. I wish you just knew that when I had my second child, I found myself crying in the shower saying the exact same thing that my clients did. So I didn't sign up for this. It's coming out September 12th. There are 5 stories in it, and it's a page turner. You will want to get to the end, which is what I want for people. And then the piece that makes it also part self-help is that at the end of each chapter, I have reflection questions for you that you can do by yourself or with your partner, so that you can take what you learn through story. Because Renee, I don't know about you, but we learn through stories. And oftentimes it resonates even more so, instead of kind of this, well, you should just do X, Y, Z. But instead when you say, oh my gosh, the story of Ashley, I do exactly that. And I see how she started to do things differently. Maybe I could start to do that.
Yeah. It's like me with my content. I can put out a TikTok explaining a situation that I went through with my husband, how it made me feel, how we like resolved it. And then everyone in the comments is like, oh my God, I didn't realize why I was so like angry on Saturday mornings, and now it all makes sense. And you know, it's because you can see yourself in the stories and relate to it. So those are really good cases. Like those are very relatable, and I feel like the most common situations, you know, it's nothing like drastic, right? But it's like it's a lot of people are probably in one of those 4 cases. Like,
absolutely.
I love that.
These common themes that show up day after day in my therapy room.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, congrats on that. I'm very excited to see it's always so exciting to see a physical book, you know? Like, I know. I love it.
It's amazing. I had a friend recently ask, how did you write it? And I had said to her, I said, I don't know. It came out of me. I'm not sure how it happened, but it's here, and it's so cool. So if people are looking for more information, you can go to drtracyd.com/book. And for people who do order it before September 12th, which is the release date, I've got a lot of special bonuses included in there so that you can continue working on your relationship while you wait for the book to come out.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on at such short notice for such an emergency of an episode.
For the scrunchie.
The great scrunchie incident. Yeah.
Yes, the great. And then we have the pancake debate and all of the other ones. Thank you, Renee. What's
going to be next? What's going to be next?
I don't know. You're surprising me every time. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you inviting me on and having this conversation. And I love how you bring in someone like myself, or the conversations you have with Dr. Tanya. I think it's so important for us to have these conversations. And
also, we should mention that you have a podcast on the same network as me now, and it's called I'm Not Your Shrink. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's so cool. This is such an incredible space. It has been something for me to give back to other people, because I mean, you understand this, it's impossible to reach everybody, and this is such a powerful platform, and the openness to be able to share cool things to learn and grow and stretch, which that episode with Dr. Tanya was fantastic. It was so good.
So good, right? Yes. Yeah. We got to do another one. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.